One of the toughest decisions a person can make is answering the call of God. If you're searching for answers and looking for advice, join us for Pathway to the Pulpit, hosted by Pastor Claude Cheatham, as he shares stories and life advice for those trying to become the person that God has called them to be. With numerous guests and tons of content to be shared, there's plenty of information to be learned. Join now and be a part of what God is trying to do in this season.
Grace and peace, love and joy from my Father. I'm Pastor Claude Cheatham, host for Pathways to the Pulpit. Man, this is a time of discovery and dialogue with our young preachers. Man, I'm so excited to be a young preacher, a millennial voice that gets to speak into our generation. It's so necessary and needed. It's really necessary because our generation needs voices that pour into each other. Man, we cannot go anywhere without each other, and we need each other to impact each other. And that's what Pathway to the Pulpit is. It's a time of discovery and dialogue to where young preachers will hear the wisdom of seasoned senior pastors that have traveled this path, that will be able to dig back on years of old and share their wisdom, share their experiences in their first church, share their wisdom throughout seminary, share their wisdom on how they manage life, how they manage their marriage, how they manage their personhood. This is really a time of discovery for our young preachers. How to manage sermon development. All of these things we will cover. Womanist theology. We will have times to where we will share with young preachers things that young preachers may not have heard. Pulpit decorum. All of these things we will share in Pathway to the Pulpit. And all we're missing is you. You got to join us. You don't want to miss these times of discovery and dialogue. The only thing that's missing is you. Look forward to having you. Good day, grace and peace be unto you. I'm excited to have you joining with us, Pathways to the Pulpit. Family, we've been growing every week. It's been an exciting time of engagement, of thought, of dialogue, where we've heard from pastors, from even peers, sharing their thoughts, ways for us to grow, which is really exciting and gives us time to be enlightened, which is what we seek to experience during this time. So I'm excited that you're back with me another week as we grow together, Pathways to the Pulpit. Man, last week we dealt with those of which that will pastor churches that they plant. We heard from Bishop Lee Alfred Thomas, who shared from a senior pastor perspective, but then we also had a peer perspective on last week, Pastor Aaron McNair. Incredible conversation. And today I'm delighted because we will continue that thought, but stretching it a little bit as we share on established churches, specifically those of which that will pastor their home church, the church that you grew up in. And so I'm incredibly delighted and excited to have a great man of God, Dr. Jeff Rumlin, who is the pastor of Day Spring Baptist Church, graduate of that other school, FAMU, Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University, Interdenominational Theological Center, ITC, and United Theological Seminary. I'm excited to have Pastor Rumlin, man. Thank you for joining me, man.
Man, Pastor, thank you so much.
It is a joy.
It's a joy for me to be here, to fall right in line with some of your great guests that you've had,
yes,
and for you to be the great host on this platform. Not only talking to your peers.
Yes.
Understand this, man. You are ministering to not only your Timothys.
Wow.
You are also ministering to the Pauls that you look up to. So
man,
I just consider it a blessing that you've allowed me to come and share on your platform and in your space today.
Man, it's an honor, man. It is completely an honor, man. So I'm excited as we share in this conversation, man, because you are one of the few pastors that pastor their home church.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that, his incredible story, family, that he will share. But before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about your call journey. Tell us about how God has, started you in ministry. What did that look like? Where was that? Give us that process of you developing as a young preacher?
I am a church kid, so I am a son of the church, but never had a desire to pastor. My parents have always been active in the church. My grandfather, who now sleeps, he was a pastor in rural Gadsden County, Florida. But my particular desire and journey was to be a sports broadcaster.
Wow.
And so that's what my degree is in.
Wow.
From FAM,
Yeah.
broadcast journalism. And so I graduated from FAMU, was not preaching at all
Wow.
in college. I was just going to church. That's all I was doing. I was just going to church as a student. Came home, got an internship with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Wow.
And that was back when we were actually good. In 99.
Years ago,
Yeah,
right?
Years ago, in 99. And
We got the draft pick, so we got something.
yeah. But I'm talking the glory days.
The glory days,
The glory,
yeah.
when the glory hovered.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And so I was there doing that and enjoyed it. I mean, that was really my passion. That was really my desire. And I really don't know what happened, when it happened, how it happened. I will use this word. I know some in the church community don't like the word evolution, but I do believe that call was an evolving call.
Wow.
And so, but there's always, I do believe, a Damascus Road experience in the life of every preacher. And the Damascus Road experience, when you study it, it is not the conversion of Paul. It is the call of Paul.
That's big.
His conversion continued even after the Damascus Road. But that Damascus Road was that demarcation point
Of his call.
of his call.
I like that.
And so my demarcation was Pastor Javis, and we'll talk about him and the Dayspring Church in greater detail. But Pastor Javis is my childhood pastor who pastored Dayspring for 18 years. He pastored before Dayspring here in Jacksonville. He pastored the West Side Church in St. Louis, Missouri. And one of his sons of the church is the great Pastor Freddie J. Clark, who now pastors Shalom Church, City of Peace in St. Louis. And Pastor Clark would come every year to do revival at Dayspring. And I never will forget, it was 2000 that Dr. Clark came and he preached the story of Abraham and Isaac, the sacrifice story.
Yeah,
and,
good story.
And he tagged it, pay now or pay later.
That'll preach.
I haven't forgotten that. Pay now or pay later. And basically the synopsis of the sermon was, you can pay God freely,
Yeah.
or God can get out of you whatever God is going to get out of you regardless, but one way or the other, you're going to have to pay.
All of this for a yes.
And that right there, Pastor, was like, hey, I think there is something greater. And I wrestled with that thing. And I would leave sometimes from lunch. And this is when Dayspring was on Jefferson Street, downtown Jacksonville, by the old Blogic homes. And so, I was 10 minutes away tops from the stadium to the church. And I would ride by the church. And I'm saying, I'm going to go in and talk to my pastor and tell him, I think I'm called. I believe I'm called, And man, sometimes I would just ride by. His car would be outside.
Yeah.
It's
not the day.
It's not the day. Let me go back to this stadium and,
Right.
and do some football. And but that day did come.
Wow.
And as nervous as I was, as scared as I was, I knew what the Lord had told me. I didn't know, again, pastoring and all of that. I just knew that the Lord had called me to preach.
Wow.
And I went in there, again, not with an arrogant spirit at all, nothing of that effect, but it was, Pastor Javis, I do believe, with a great conviction that the Lord has called me to preach.
Wow.
And as the Lord would have it, I preached my first sermon July 15th, 2001.
Wow.
Joshua chapter 24. Choose you this day whom you will serve. And I tagged it, the choice is yours.
I like it.
And so I probably need to revisit that passage.
Yeah.
That probably was god awful, but
It was your first sermon.
That was my first one. That was my first one. And so here we are years later.
Man, that's amazing. I hear you referencing former pastor a lot. So let's shift into, tell me a little bit about some of those mentors that shaped your life, shaped your ministry, or even your understanding of pastoring. Who were those individuals that really had that hand imprint on your life?
Preaching wise, and I'm going to mix preaching and pastor.
Sure.
Preaching wise, the pastor before Pastor Javis was a man by the name of Reverend J.A. Oliver. Pastor Oliver only pastored Dayspring 18 months. He died at the age of 50 from cancer.
Wow.
The longtime pastor of Dayspring was Pastor Cyrus Weaver. When Pastor Weaver got sick in 82, he called for Reverend Oliver to come. He was pastoring Sweetfield Baptist Church at that time on the east side. Again, church folks and church politics, they put him out. Sweetfield put him out. Rough situation. Now, I'm only a child.
Right.
But I still remember, and I've heard the stories of it. And so Pastor Oliver was without a church. Pastor Weaver, and watch this, and Pastor Oliver could shut it down. I have, my dad had cassette tapes, and we have converted those cassette tapes onto CDs.
Wow.
And you can hear him
going for it.
Flat foot, go get it. And so I remember him. He was always in our home. He was a friend of my parents. He was always in our home. And so he was the first pastor that I saw outside of the pulpit. And my nickname for him was Cool.
Wow.
As a little boy, he was just cool.
He was just cool.
Yeah. And so he passed away. And so Pastor Javis came, and he's the pastor that baptized me. He's the pastor that licensed me. He's the pastor that ordained me. And I learned from Pastor Javis the importance of administration, the importance of scholarship, the importance of being a visionary when it comes to pastoring. When I got to Atlanta to start my seminary work, I landed at the greatest church in the world, the Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. And I consider him, and he sleeps now with the ancestors, I consider him my pastoral father in the ministry, Reverend O.L. Blackshear.
Wow.
And I loved him literally as a second father.
Wow.
And I learned from him the meaning of being a hands-on pastor. I saw him, minister to folks. I saw him in good times, on Sunday mornings, on Tuesday night Bible study, just being with the people, And so as a young preacher, you're looking like, man, again, he was my T.E. Jakes. He was my Jamal Bryant, if you will. And as great as he actually was, he was just as lowly and humble. And I'm like, hey man, you too cool. and so, but I learned, hey, laugh with people, cry with people, sit with people, walk with people. I learned that from him. And,
those are some good lessons.
Yeah, and it's lessons that you can't learn in school.
Absolutely.
You learn that by sitting under somebody who has been doing it for decades. And that's the opportunity that I had in Atlanta.
Wow. So those were the two pastors that you would say that shaped your ministry and really developed you in an intentional way. Wow. So as we began the conversation, sharing, you pastored your home church. You're currently pastoring your home church. And so I understand that there are young preachers that will plant. There are young preachers that will pastor established churches, but there will also be young preachers that will pastor established churches that are specifically their home church. What prompted that? How did you get there? Tell me about that. I mean, pastoring your home church, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was never my desire to come back to Jacksonville. I did not want to come back to Jacksonville, and I definitely did not want to come to Dayspring.
Wow.
I loved Atlanta. Atlanta was
Hot Atlanta.
Hot Atlanta. It was my second home.
Yeah.
I still consider it my adopted home.
Yeah.
And so when I say I did not want to leave Atlanta, and I told Pastor Blackshear, I said, Pastor, I want to stay here in Atlanta with you on staff. I don't need no pastor or nothing like that. I want to stay here at Mount Pleasant. And when you see fit that if you think I'm ready to pastor any small church in the Metro Atlanta area. When I say Metro Atlanta, I'm talking Jonesboro, Stockbridge, Conyers, Villa Rica, Gwinnett County. So I didn't need to be in Fulton or DeKalb. I just need to be able to get to 20
Gwinnett,
or 75 real quick, and I'm straight,
right?
And so, but as God would be God, Dayspring was in a dark and difficult place in the early 2000s, and so Pastor Javis retired in 2003. He had cast the vision for the church to relocate from Jefferson Street to Dunn Avenue. There was some contention in the congregation, but however, the majority of the congregation did want to move and relocate for growth potential, and so so they were vacant without a pastor and all of that, and one of the deacons who was deceased, Deacon Samuel Jennings, called Pastor Blackshear, and they had a conversation. And basically, as I was told the conversation, it was in short order, Deacon Jennings asking Pastor Blackshear, do you think Jeffrey is ready? And Pastor Blackshear gave the blessing.
Wow.
And so then in turn, Deacon Jennings called me, had a real deep voice. And again, I was in seminary, so that's almost still like what it is college if you're a master's program. So I wasn't, getting up at 9, 10 o'clock going to somebody's job every single day. So I would sleep, when this old man called me.
No, I get it.
Young preacher, this is Deacon Jennings calling from Dayspring Baptist Church. And he said, the Lord has laid on my heart to call you and ask you to pray. As you know, we're vacant. And I'm treating you as every other minister that we are extending invitations to some who already know we're open, And again, and after prayer, put my name in the hat, and 17 years later,
wow,
I'm still here.
Yeah, man. No, I'm sure that's been a surreal experience, a full circle experience, and I'm sure there have been some incredible lessons that you can share. Being, what have been some of the advantages, or what could you share been some of the positives of pastoring your home church? And then, what can be, I'll say, not necessarily disadvantages, but some of the challenges per se to pastoring your home church that you would share with our young preaching community?
I think the number one advantage is, especially in my early years, those folks gave me a whole lot of grace.
Because they knew you.
Because they knew me.
Yeah.
And yes, I've made mistakes. We all made mistakes. So
Yeah.
I'm not breaking any news with that. But those folks, and when I say those folks, I'm not those older members, again, who knew me as a little boy, gave me room, to slip and fall. Gave me room, again, sometimes getting up there, like all of us as preachers, saying something that in our head, we know it's supposed to come out one way,
right?
But then by the time it gets out of our mouth,
come out that way.
Then it comes back to our head like, I
probably shouldn't have said that.
I probably shouldn't have said that. So that I would say, them giving me room to grow.
Gotcha.
Was the biggest, and still is to a degree, the biggest advantage. The biggest disadvantage, if you will, that I think all pastors who pastor their home church has to understand is we have to be secure in God calling us, because yes, there will always be somebody. The number can decrease, but there will always be somebody. Little Jeffrey, I remember you when your Easter speech and all that type of thing, and so. Where if we allow ego to come into play,
stay there, talk a little about
we'll
that.
take it as a shot. But in actuality, it's really not a shot because in time, and what I've learned is that you will begin to pastor two different congregations. So when I first got to Dayspring, yes, it was the congregation that knew me as a little boy who got up and did Christmas speeches and Easter speeches and all that. But as I've remained and as the Lord has sent new people, you now have people in the congregation. The only person they know is Pastor Rumlin.
Yeah.
See, they don't know Jeffrey, the little boy.
Right.
You know, they don't know Jeffrey, the high school student. They don't know Jeffrey, the FAMU student who would come home. They know Pastor Rumlin. And so now, again, that evolution, that process, I think ego has to be removed so that you do not let mother so-and-so or brother so-and-so who's 60, 70 years old, watch this. If you pastor, you'll be the pastor. You just got a pastor.
That's big.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You just got a pastor.
Yeah. No. So how did it? How did it happen, if you will, or how did you manage those moments of, I'll say, those challenging conversations? Every young preacher isn't polished, if you will. So how would you recommend handling some of those? I knew you win, or I remember this experience, or even some of those mistakes that you made as a younger preacher. What would you share in managing those experiences?
A few things. One, time. You got to let time run its course. Second of all, when we say let God fight the battle, let God through other people fight the battle. I'll give you this example, real life story. Like I said, this is year one, no more than year two. Our senior citizens ministry meets every Thursday. And at this time, and she still is alive, Sister Mary Floyd. Sister Mary Floyd was over our senior citizens ministry. And of course, as a young pastor trying to engage and to gain the hearts, especially of the senior saints, every Thursday I would go down there, shake hands, hug them, do that whole thing. You've always been told to do from the old preacher.
Yeah.
And one day I'm walking out and somebody, I don't know who it was, and they didn't say it disrespectfully. Somebody said, "All right, Jeffrey, we'll see you." And Miss Floyd, who's over the senior citizens ministry, and she's ill now, but she was strong. When she said something in church and with them seniors, she said, "Pastor, stop." I'm walking out the door. She says, "Pastor, stop." So I stopped. I turn around. She says, "We all in this room have known him since he was 6 years old. But in here, he's Pastor Rumlin. Nobody to call him by his first name.
That's good.
We've always been older than him. We're going to always be older than him. But he's our pastor." And so I say that to say, we have to let folks also be our advocates. You see, and then concerning the voice, we have to have, and I think we get it in time, maybe one or two. It's not a whole lot. Now, let me be very clear. It's not a whole lot in the church. So that's why I say one or two. People in that congregation, and I do believe the Lord puts one or two in there, that can come to the pastor, and the pastor can go to them and say, "Hey, did that sound?" Because this is what I meant to say. Yeah, you kind of, next time do it like this, So you got to have people around you who can speak wisdom into your life.
Right.
And as you do that, I think that is how we begin, to learn more and to be more effective in the pastorate. Because again, all of us, when we first come into it, man, we coming with guns blazing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We're coming with guns blazing.
Yeah.
But then we got to learn, okay, when do I hit the gas? When do I come off the gas? When do I hit the brake? And watch this, when do I even turn the car off?
Wow.
Wisdom.
Yeah, no, that's incredible thoughts, man. Which really led me into that story was amazing. As it relates to how you gained Sister Mary's respect. And I'm sure pastoring your home church, there was, the process of gaining respect. Share a little bit about the process, and then, as you've already done, I guess give it some flavor there as well.
The process is you have to look at quote unquote church members as the Bible describes them, as sheep. So I don't come into it, even though, like I say, I know them, they know me. I don't come into it saying that's Miss So-and-so, who used to, take me over here, so forth and so on. No, I'm responsible for this lady's soul. So I have to.
Your mindset has to change.
My mindset, as even as the young preacher, it has to change. That I can't say, I can't correct brother so-and-so or deacon so-and-so, because I remember him at 10 years old leading devotion, and when he moved, everybody moved. No, I have to learn how to correct. I have to learn how to cast vision.
That's good.
But I also have to be comfortable and confident in the role that I'm in, because the Lord did call me and station me here to pastor. He didn't station me here just to be, a cupbearer.
Sure.
So hey, I have to pastor everybody in here. And my pastoring, my vision casting may not always line up to what somebody thinks, because again, we talk about pastoring our home church, even when we pastor our friends, if you will, that, hey, listen here, we can chop it up all day long after the benediction. But when we walk in here, this thing is about kingdom.
Right.
And if I got to say, hey, take 2 steps to the left, I got to say what I have to say, but I still got to say it in the spirit of love.
Right.
If I'm coming through there.
No, that makes sense.
So the mindset, I would say, even for the young preacher, you cannot just sit back and say, oh, well, Miss Johnson, always made me, my birthday cake, so I ain't
gonna say nothing to her.
If Miss Johnson is out of order, in a spirit of love, you have a rod and a staff, and it's your responsibility to guide the sheep, as all of us are being guided by the chief under shepherd.
Give us a practical example, or I'll say a statement of how to say that in a loving way before we shift into our next question.
In a loving way. I think most of us, like you say, we love stories. Of course, how did Jesus teach? He used parables.
Yeah.
And so I think, and we all know this, there is something that is called pastoral psychology. And that we have to be careful as pastors not to abuse it, but to be able to use stories. And if it is a story of great example, how many of you in here, especially when you're dealing with an older congregation, because that is what I inherited. I inherited an older congregation. How many of you in here, have seen churches struggle as the pastor has gotten up in age? Yeah, pastor, because they can relate to that.
They can relate to
They
that.
can relate to that. How many of you have seen, the music ministry struggle a little bit when that strong lead singer, gets a little older and he or she can't carry it the way that she used to? Yeah, we've seen it. Well, watch this. Why is it that when the pastor reaches a certain age, you want to say he needs or she needs to shift? He needs some help. We need a younger guy in here. We need a younger sister in here. But watch it. If y'all can say that about the pastor, why can't we say that about ministry leaders?
Yeah,
you see,
that's a good way.
And so now, because see, we already now got them on the hook.
Yeah,
because everybody will agree. Oh yeah, when Reb get certain age, don't you think he need to retire by now? I mean,
Yeah.
the young people aren't coming. The middle age, all of that stuff.
Right.
Well, watch it. If it's good enough for the pulpit,
It's good enough for the pew.
it's good enough for the pew as well.
Man, that's
so now we have to be able, again, to put that mirror up, I believe. Say it in the spirit of love, but say it to where it's relatable. And that is the truth.
That's big,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I appreciate your words of wisdom, and I'm sure many of our young preachers are growing. As we prepare to wrap up, what would be some advice that you would give to a young preacher either desiring to pastor their home church or being considered to pastor their home church? What would you share with them?
First thing is don't desire it. That's the first thing. Again, I did not want to be at Dayspring. And I've even had a serious opportunity some years ago to leave Dayspring. Bigger church, bigger everything, money, package, the whole shebang. Don't desire it. Go to where the Lord has called you and placed you. I didn't go to the bigger, not because I didn't think I could eventually handle it and grow into it, and grow with that ministry. I sincerely, even to this day, believe that the Lord has not released me and I have not done everything that I was supposed to do at Dayspring.
Wow.
And so for the young preacher, wherever the Lord stations you, make sure the Lord has placed you there. So don't look at it as a desire. Look at it to see, is this where the Lord is placing me? And if that is the place where the Lord is placing you, surround yourself with some senior pastors who have the respect of the congregation, and let them come in, preach, do workshops, things of that nature to help undergird you as you get your bearings.
Wow.
Again, I don't want to name drop.
No, you're good.
But I do want to say this because I want to give them their respect.
Sure.
When I first started, Bishop Rudolph McKissick Sr., Pastor Ernie Murray,
Yeah.
St. Thomas Church, Pastor Gary Williams,
Yeah.
Hopewell Church, those, Pastor Tom Diamond, Bishop Tommy Diamond, at the Abyssinia Church, those, my first year pastoring, those giants came through.
Wow.
You see, and spoke not just to the congregation, but they also spoke to me. You see, and so again, I go back to the whole Paul, Timothy, and Timothy Titus. Now, 17 years in, as a Timothy, I can bring in some of my Tituses, my friends, and they can still get a word across.
Right.
But in my earlier years, when I was Timothy, I needed to bring in as many of my Pauls.
Wow. That's big.
You see what I'm saying? I need to bring in, and watch, and still to this day, I still bring in Paul. Now, I'm Timothy, so I can bring in some of my Titus and some of my homeboys. But I still know that, hey, there are some voices that, hey,
That's wisdom.
when they say it, like you say, how we say it and we can mess it up, they can come in and say the exact same thing.
Yeah. And it go over so much more.
And it goes so much smoother. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would say, again, surround yourself not for the sake of being buddy-buddy, because there was another generation of pastor that came and helped undergird my ministry, the likes of Bishop Rudolph McKissick Jr., Bishop Leoford Thomas, Bishop John Guns, that generation who's under, of course, Bishop Senior, again, more contemporary in ministry, more progressive in ministry, because that's where I was trying to take my ministry. You see, so now watch this. I'm trying to show my home church I can respect the past, have no problem with respecting the past, but I also know, hey, y'all, this is where we need to go. And again, let me bring in some folks, voices of the city and the community that we all respect, that can now, again, undergird me. So now, as I'm standing on their shoulders, now the next generation that's going to come behind me, hopefully they can do the same, standing on my shoulders as I have helped them the same way those that I've called and even others have helped me.
Wow, man. Thank you so much for taking the time and the wisdom shared. Today was rich. And I hope that as young preachers, we've been able to grow from these encounters. Look forward to seeing you next time. God bless you. We'll see you.
Jeff Kennedy once said, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. All that is simply translated into is I want to be here to help you grow. I want to grow with you. I want to be your partner as you're going through this process of the pathway. It's a journey. It's an experience, and we can grow together. Let's connect. Let's connect on social media. You can find me on platforms such as Facebook and Instagram at CDC2 Speaks. At CDC2 Speaks. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your stories. I want to laugh with you. I want to experience life with you. I want to grow with you as a young preacher. Let's grow together. I believe as we grow together, God has something amazing in store.
You have been watching Pathway to the Pulpit, hosted by Claude Douglas Cheatham Jr. of Edward Waters University. The program is designed to guide young clergy and HBU students to understand their divine assignment and maneuvering their pathway to destiny. For more information, you contact Claude Douglas Cheatham Jr. Edward Waters University, 1658 Kings Road, Jacksonville, Florida, 32209.
Dreaming about having your own podcast? Want to share your thoughts and ideas with the world but don't know how to do it? Maybe you're excited and committed but don't have a good space to record. Would you like a professional environment to produce all of your podcasts? Well, we have the latest technology from 4K to HD and various set layouts from green screen rooms to live studios. The Inspire Network is an actual television station where our studios are available for rent and we offer editing suites with the latest technology. We have a makeup studio and beautiful spaces to prepare for your show. Don't forget to ask about our convenient photography studio to capture professional headshots or redefine your new look. Our state-of-the-art facility is intentionally laid out to accommodate your multimedia needs.